Today in episode 27 of the podcast, we will be discussing Paramount Plus and Max potentially merging into one service. And we have San Diego Comic-Con coming up, and we have some banners getting hung up for Fantastic Four that's giving some hints at the story. We'll also break down the 6th episode of The Acolyte and review the film Despicable Me 4. I'm Brad, he's Josh, and welcome to We'll Bring the Popcorn.
Start off this week by talking about Warner Brothers and Paramount exploring the possibility of merging Max and Paramount Plus into one streaming service. Now, this is something we've talked about a lot, like over the course of this podcast at this point, with so many of these companies talking about coming together. And this one actually feels like it's picking up a little more steam to feel like it's an actual, possibility to happen. I know both companies are an estimated like $60 billion in debt for these services, which is insane, but it seems like it's going to be the smart play to try to merge these two, but I don't know what that's going to look like for all the original content and everything that goes on each of these individual services and how it's going to work.
As we've talked about a lot, that streaming has, it exploded because of COVID a whole lot more, but they're actually, now that they pump so much money into it, that it's losing them money just every single month, every single day. So it's not surprising that we're starting to see more and more, bundle or merge or something else. But yeah, you've got two different companies, which there are still talks about different mergers with studios as well. So this could potentially, maybe be the groundwork of a full merger of the entire studios together. Okay. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. Is it going to be like, all right, do you choose Max? Do you choose Paramount Plus? And then you go in it, or is all the content just going to be mixed together? Because they're going to want to make sure hey, this is Paramount Plus, this is Max, we belong to this and that. But yeah, if they do end up merging those together with still being two separate companies, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that.
It's a lot of content to bring together too, because we both use both of those services, and they have a lot of content on both platforms, and it'd be awesome if they put them together. But I think at the end of the day, what everybody, including everybody listening and watching this right now, are worried about what it's going to cost us, the end user of the product, right? Because how many people actually care about these companies really merging and doing what it is? It's fun to talk about from like a business perspective, but I think at the end of the day, I think what people are most concerned is what it's going to cost us. And we've talked, a lot about companies raising prices for this, that, and the other. Like Netflix seems like it's going up every 6 months now to where it's almost unaffordable for a lot of people.
They also just killed off their cheapest tier too.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to start to see companies like this that do merge together, instead of it costing, $9.99 a month or $15 a month. Is it going to start costing $25 a month for this service? Like, what's that going to look like for everybody? And it could be a real deal breaker for a lot of people that have kind of already, you're starting to hear a little bit of that groundswell of people well, now I'm just picking and choosing what services I want based on a show I like coming out at a particular time. I know people that are big fans of Stranger Things, as an example, on Netflix, that are canceling their Netflix until the next season of Stranger Things comes out so they can binge it all together. You know what I mean? The value in it for people month to month aren't what it was during the pandemic, now that everybody's kind of back in, out and about and living their everyday lives again. And I'm wondering what that holds for the future of streaming overall and what it's going to look like.
And you also got the password sharing crackdown stuff too. Absolutely, that people are upset about, because I'm dealing with it at home because I have most everything wireless, but I have the game consoles and other things like that wired.
Sure.
But with, say, Netflix, if, the wife or the kids are watching in their rooms and I try to watch on the Xbox, it doesn't read the Xbox as being on my family home network because it's a wired connection. It's not wireless. And so I have to then re-verify that this is my household to watch it on the Xbox, but then that'll kick everybody else off who's watching it, wirelessly and streaming it. And it's just, they're creating a lot of headaches now. I get that, they're losing money. They want to try to get people, and a lot of people are sharing accounts, but I'm in the same house, and it's causing me issues just trying to watch it on different devices, depending on if it's wired or wireless. And, that's just been a headache. I'll get a text okay, I guess Nicole's watching it upstairs, so I've now got to switch it, so I know I can't watch it on my consoles here anymore. It's just a big pain and a problem that way. But yeah, we don't know what the cost, we can look at Disney Plus and Hulu being available in one, app, that's owned by the same company, but you're still paying the two separate costs for that, or, doing the Disney bundle to get it, but it's not one singular cost. Is that going to be the same thing too? Or is it going to be under one service, but you have to pay for Max separately and Paramount Plus separately? Or is there going to be a new price that's probably more expensive than what it was separately, or is it going to be the same? So if they were both $10 each, is the new service going to be $20 a month? And yeah, that can sway a lot of people on what it is, because we're getting to the point. Like, I canceled satellite TV because I was paying upwards of $160 a month for TV. And with all these streaming services, you're getting back to that point. Like, if you have Apple TV Plus and Netflix and Hulu and Peacock and Paramount Plus and all of them out there, you're well over $100.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, where people are starting to pick and choose what they invest their money in, and that's where these companies are getting paranoid, because they want to keep your money with that service. And what are they going to do? Obviously, the answer could be to offer more content, but at the same time, it's a fine line that they walk, because say this merger does go through and you get all the, to be fair, both services offer a ton of great content on both platforms. I use them both and love a significant amount of programming that's on both services. But at the same time, like you said, is it going to start costing $35-$40 a month? Is that going to be worth it for what it provides? And that's to be determined, right? Because, is that enough to keep people month to month staying invested, or are you going to have to rely on, a constant turnover? It's a fascinating business, a business case study that I think, I would like to dive more into and kind of just see some of the numbers month to month, or even year over year, of people that are either paying for a year at a time or paying for a month at a time, and who actually sticks with it, and what people's viewing habits are, because it's a fascinating case to follow.
Especially with Max, you have a lot of people that may be doing, like you mentioned with Stranger Things, that they're, with House of the Dragon, they might be waiting till all of that's out, then they get a subscription, binge it, and then cancel it. After that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens when they bring these together, because, Paramount Plus does have a lot of kid programming, while Max has a lot of adult programming. They have some kid programming too, but, you're mixing more, I guess, family. It's not all family friendly, but you're getting more family with more adult, which it could be beneficial, but it really depends in the back just how are they going to split this up between revenue and cost and everything else. And yeah, just going into the logistics about it can be boring to a lot of people, but it's intriguing to see how they would do this, and if they keep the price at the right point to get people on board with it.
Absolutely.
Moving on, we have the Fantastic Four has banners hanging at San Diego Comic-Con. So we were just a week or two away from that. It was like, we went back in 2019. It was a ton of fun. But if you paid real good attention to those banners, you saw a little bitty symbol and some text on the bottom of the symbols that said the Future Foundation. So if you know the Fantastic Four comics, this was something that came in the comics around, I think it was 2010, from the big storyline there. But this was a new organization that was created within the Fantastic Four. So Reed Richards kind of got tired of the scientific community and how things were going, so he created the Future Foundation to try to help the world better, because he was just frustrated with how everyone else was doing things. But this also led to big team up. So we got some smaller Marvel characters in there, but Spider-Man, She-Hulk, Ant-Man, even Doctor Doom for a little bit was a part of this. So that could be a big hint to the MCU Fantastic Four movie of kind of the direction they're going in. We spoke about in the last episode about it being in an alternate universe set in the 60s. So are we getting an older beginning to the Future Foundation, or exactly how they're going to handle this doing it in the past? Because it's always been almost look-wise a more futuristic. It's white and black and really techie looking suits, but we're potentially getting the storyline back in the 60s.
Yeah, I'm also curious to see how this is going to play a part in the story, because there is so much that's still unknown about it. Like you said, it is a period piece, but like you said, the Future Foundation is this futuristic type of storyline. Is that how they're going to connect the past to the present and how they work together? Marvel's notorious for very smart marketing, right? So them putting it on these banners and hanging it up at Comic-Con, it's not a coincidence, right? So it's going to be incorporated somehow. We just don't know what. And it's fun to, put your detective hat on and, do the research and kind of, try to find out where it's going to fit in and kind of speculate. And one of the things that I'm hoping that comes out of San Diego Comic-Con in a couple weeks, because Marvel is going to have a presence there after not having one there for, I want to say 2 years, maybe.
Something like
that.
Yeah,
like they haven't been there in a couple years, but they're coming back to Hall H this year. So I'm thinking with this new, like, concerted effort in the storylines and storytelling, that's going to be a big part of it too. And I'm hoping to see, all 4 of the Fantastic Four show up at that event, kind of introduced as part of that presentation, and maybe talk about the future of Marvel a little bit, which is very exciting to see all the news and stories that's going to come out of that. Because like you said, we've been there and it's such an amazing thing to be a part of. We've been to Hall H. It's a ton of fun, but to see the stories that are going to be coming out of it and the news that they're going to give us is very exciting. And, the Fantastic Four, we've talked so much here about how big and important it is to the future of Marvel to have what's essentially the first family of Marvel back in the fold and being able to be a part of this, connected cinematic universe that they're working on. I'm going to be interested to see how much of that actually plays into this story because, it's just a little tidbit on a banner, but Marvel takes a little breadcrumb and it could totally blow up to be this integral part of the story. And it's a lot of fun to, get this slow rolled out a little bit to kind of not know everything up front, which is missing from a lot of stories these days.
Yeah, a lot of times we just get everything right away, and there's so many trailers and things you can look at. Like I just saw the whole film in the trailer, so it's interesting even before they've started filming or anything else. Just on a banner that's going to be hanging around the streets of San Diego Comic-Con that they're just throwing out there. Hey, Future Foundation, like. That's a big hint at something, and getting speculation going wild. Because you got to figure at their panel, there's got to be the Fantastic Four, looking probably Daredevil,
sure,
maybe something on Blade.
Hopefully,
I think the last Comic-Con they were at was when they announced Blade,
right.
And it's been a few years now, so there's plenty they could be talking about. We also. Where we get a new title for the Avengers film. Is it still going to be about Kang? Or are they going to announce that they've recast Kang or something else? So there's a lot they can be doing at Comic-Con, but just to go ahead and do those banners and bring out the Future Foundation, like not only for the Fantastic Four movie, but how is that going to play forward? Because as we're doing a period piece in the 60s in Altered Universe, but like I said, Ant-Man, She-Hulk, Spider-Man, all of them been a part of that group. Are we going to see Spider-Man? Is that a hint that maybe Spider-Man will go from the Avengers to the Fantastic Four for a little bit? Or, because we got Spider-Man 4 getting ramped up here, we might get some information at San Diego Comic-Con. We haven't heard a whole lot if it will or not, but, there's potential that it's filming this year. There's a lot that Marvel could do with the Future Foundation and the Fantastic Four going forward with this kind of big hint.
Yeah, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see what comes out of Comic-Con and the news and the stories, and I can't wait to talk about that here and break that down once that does come out and kind of get the ball rolling a little bit on seeing what the future of Marvel is going to look like, because I think they're going to really roll this out again in a brand new way that's like, this is the direction that we're confirmed we're going in. Obviously, we hope there's news about Blade. We talk about that all the time, how much we've been looking forward to that. Hopefully it's like, hey, sorry, it's taken so long, but we figured it out and we're getting ready to start finally. Hopefully that's the case, but fingers crossed for, some positive updates on that coming out of Comic-Con too. And we'll have all that to touch on when we get into, the next episode following that, and we get all those stories to start breaking down and talk about. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, and hopefully in a year or two, we can be at San Diego Comic-Con covering it for the podcast.
I would love it. I would love nothing more. I know we're starting slowly with some local stuff first that we're hoping to get access to, but hopefully that builds into something bigger too, because I'm very much looking forward to the possibilities that could bring for us, for sure.
Yes, we got the Cincy Comic Expo coming up later this year, which we're really excited about. We've got nearly the entire cast for X-Men 97 coming and stuff. So, it's had to move from the Duke Convention Center to the Sharonville Convention Center, which, that's normally where they have Horror Hound and stuff. But we've got some good conventions here in Cincinnati. But, there's just something about San Diego Comic-Con that's just special. We were a part of the Dragon Ball Z Guinness World Record there and did a whole lot of stuff. That was a ton of fun. And I'm looking forward to Cincy Comic Expo this year because they've really got a stacked cast of creators. We even got, for our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fans, we got Kevin Eastman, who's going to be there this year. So that's amazing to have him come to Cincinnati and be able to see him. So, yeah, there's a lot of news we can get out of it, but just for being fans ourselves to be able to go to like Cincy Comic Expo and stuff is going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, hopefully we'll return to San Diego Comic-Con here soon and sit in on that Marvel panel that we didn't get to last time. But yeah, it feels like this one more than the last few years. Like DC, I don't think is going to have a big presence there because James Gunn is currently filming Superman. Yeah. But I think Marvel is going to have a pretty big presence.
Right, and that's always exciting. It is Marvel month that we like to jokingly talk about here because of Deadpool and Wolverine, which kind of leads me to our next story. So Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds are currently doing the press junket for Deadpool and Wolverine. So excited to see some of the stills and some of the stuff they're doing. They seem like they're having a ton of fun, just jet setting around the world. I know they were in Shanghai, China recently. They were in Europe for a little bit. We're getting closer and closer to that movie, and obviously we can't be more excited about that. But also coming out this week was a little bit of interesting news that they've confirmed that they're working on another project together that's actually not superhero related. So this will be the first time that they're collaborating on a film that's not Marvel or, Wolverine or Deadpool, topics of the movie. So I'm interested to see what they work together on because their chemistry just feels amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising at this point that they haven't done anything other because did X-Men Origins Wolverine, which the Deadpool version we don't talk about, and everything there. Even though almost the Wolverine version we don't talk about that movie about a whole lot anymore. But it's that and it's Deadpool and Wolverine. That's the only time they've really worked together. But outside of that, their social media banter and everything back and forth for 10, 15 years has been great. Like they seem to have a great friendship, but they just haven't found a project to do together or, but those two could do something really great. Maybe a buddy cop movie or just something else but they have such good chemistry and fun with each other. I'm really looking forward to see what they end up coming up with to do, outside of the superhero realm, because it does sound like we'll see a little bit more of their Deadpool and Wolverine after this film, so they're not quite done in the superhero realm together. But yeah, doing something not superhero related, I hope they finally found the right project. That'll be a ton of fun because it's going to be more humorous and ribbing and going after each other. So it should be a ton of fun.
The buddy cop genre, I think, is absolutely perfect for the two of them, just based on the comedic timing and the chemistry that they have together. It would be such a big slam dunk of a possibility to put those two in that type of movie together that I'm hoping that's what it is. But definitely excited to see more details on that as it comes out.
Yeah, kind of jumping into DC a little bit here. So as we mentioned, it is kind of Marvel month. That Deadpool and Wolverine is tracking to be a huge film at the end of the month here. They're on their press tour and everything else. So Zack Snyder, just kind of the timing seems a little humorous to me. Like we're ramping up for Deadpool and Wolverine. He's like, oh, my 4-hour Justice League cut is coming to theater. Stay tuned for when.
That's so silly. It's such a Zack Snyder thing to do. It seems like he's got to find some way to kind of keep his name out there, which is, I guess, smart for him from a business perspective. But it's like, hey, I know you're excited about this, but remember this thing you all clamored for, the Snyder Cut? We're putting it in theaters now. So, I mean, I enjoyed the Snyder Cut version of Justice League. Will I go see it in theaters? I'm not gonna lie. I know we normally advocate for the type of thing, but probably not.
Yeah, it's really hard with even how much we've talked about we're Lord of the Rings fans, and they've been putting the extended editions back in theaters. Even those at 3.5 to 4 hours has us questioning: are we going to sit in theaters for that long to be able to watch this movie? Even though we love them a lot, and I don't love the Snyder cut of Justice League nearly as much as I love the Lord of the Rings film. So to go to theaters to see that 4-hour cut, I don't know if I would get myself to be there, and we'll see. There's still a lot of people out there clamoring for the Snyderverse to remain and keep going, and we'll see if they back up and support the film when it hits theaters.
Yeah, and I hope they do, but like you said, it's a big time commitment, right? So we talk about length of film being important as long as the story's good. Like I said, I enjoyed the movie, but I think where they messed up a little bit is putting it on Max right away, rolling it out the way they did instead of putting it in the theaters. I think if they put it in the theater to begin with and then put it on the streaming service, I think it may have done a little better than what it's probably going to do. I think it'll do okay in the theater, but that's a lot to carve out some time to go see. That's a long movie, and I'm curious to see what it actually does when it actually hits the theaters. If it has a successful run, and I hope it does. I'm not trying to knock them trying to do it, but I'm curious to see what the final take on that's going to be.
It's also been, what, a year or two since he released that cut, and we have, as we mentioned, James Gunn, starting his DCU.
Correct.
There's been a lot of time. There's a whole lot going on. Like, I still feel like the feeling around DC is still very mixed, so
Sure,
I don't know if how many people are going to be flocking out to see the 4-hour Justice League cut, but again, you're going to have those diehard Snyderverse people that will go. But will it actually make a decent amount of money for them? We don't really know. Like, we're not expecting it to be a big blockbuster because it's probably only going to be in theaters for a week. But we'll see if it breaks 5-10 million maybe. But it potentially could. But yeah, you're looking at a 4-hour cut of a movie that is several years old and a cut that's a couple years old now, and people's feelings on DC. Like, we'll see how it does.
Yeah, and it'll be curious to see that come out. But kind of keeping up with the DC theme a little bit, there's been a little bit of an update on the Arkham Asylum series that was supposed to be happening on Max. It appears to be dead in the water at the moment. Now, that was supposed to be set up in the Matt Reeves, Batman universe kind of thing that they'd set up with the Robert Pattinson film. And it appears like it's getting, its legs cut out from under it a little bit. And now I don't know if that's directly related to the fact that they're going so into the James Gunn DC Universe story with this. I'm not entirely sure what caused them to cancel it, because it does seem like they're investing in the Robert Pattinson Batman as well. So I'm kind of curious to see what their reasoning was for not continuing the series.
Yeah, because someone mentioned that they want to do something related to Arkham Asylum, so that might be something they revisit down the line. So they're just, maybe the story wasn't coming along, because it started out as a Gotham Police Department series, and then it moved into an Arkham Asylum series. So maybe just with the showrunner or something else, they just weren't feeling the direction's going, so they decided to stop it and restart it. Or maybe James Gunn was like, well, I'd rather do something like that that's related to the DCU instead of, the Robert Pattinson Batman. We don't really know, but it is kind of disappointing, because I'm really looking forward to the Penguin that comes out in September. That is looking great. That is set in Matt Reeves' The Batman universe and seems to be handled extremely well. And so for the Arkham Asylum to not even really get started, there just had to be something that they just weren't feeling with that series.
Yeah, you kind of wonder if those two universes can coexist for an extended period of time. Or if they're kind of letting them tell their story with Batman, do the Penguin thing, and then go back to Batman, and then they're kind of done with it, maybe? I don't know, but it definitely seems like it's something up in the air that I know we were both looking forward to seeing what this was going to turn into, and it's a little disappointing. But like you said, if they don't feel like it's creatively good enough, good on them for saying, hey, we'll nix it because we don't want to invest enough time in something that we're not completely convinced is going to be high quality. I'm all for it. That's something we want, rather than just them giving us something they're not 100% behind.
Yeah, so we're looking at, we have Joker 2 later this year. We have the Batman Part 2. It's going to start filming, I believe, early 2025 now. So maybe just in the timeline of everything, it just didn't work out. Could be. Maybe we'll get something in the future that really works, because it's not Arkham, but we've got where the, Joker Part 2, where he's in the mental hospital or whatever else. So maybe they felt, after seeing what they've done there, maybe, the timing wasn't right to do Arkham Asylum. But, maybe we'll get more in the future, and we'll see if it's tied to Matt Reeves or if it's something in the DCU.
I hope so.
So heading over to some news with Netflix, which is unfortunate news in many ways. So we have the Umbrella Academy has their final season coming out here in just a few months. I think it's in August that we see that premiere. But the showrunner behind the Steve Blackman is being accused of toxic bullying, manipulative, and retaliatory behavior by 12 employees. So it's not a great story. There are accusations. They still need to go through all their due process and everything with that to, make sure all of them are valid and everything else. But it's something you hate to see, especially with the Umbrella Academy and what it's kind of about, and the characters, and you have Elliot Page part of it and everything else. Like, it's sad to see, but Netflix is already moving on basically from Blackman. He's got 2 other series in the works. Well, they're now dead in the water. One was called Orbital, but the other one was a pretty big one. It was Horizon Zero Dawn live action. If you know the Sony video game series, that's a pretty big series for them to go ahead and cut. It didn't even seem like they wanted to replace him as showrunner or anything else. They just went ahead and killed it. But I can't see Sony letting that kind of die. No. With how big that series has become for them, they're going to either move that to somewhere else, get a new showrunner, restart it. But I have a feeling that's not the last we're going to see of the Horizon Zero Dawn series.
Yeah, I mean, I want to take a second to kind of address the accusations to Steve Blackman as well, because at the end of the day, there's so many reports of, this type of thing happening on sets with, different people in positions of power kind of abusing that power and like talking down to people that are working on, that they feel are beneath them or work, in lesser positions working on these projects. And good on these people for finally speaking up.
Absolutely.
If, of course, legally speaking, if these accusations are proven to be true, obviously, due process and, do your due diligence to make sure that this is actually happening. Not saying it's not, but like, if it is, like, the guy's got to go, right? People that are in that position should have no abuse of power is acceptable in that situation. Treat people with respect. I say it all the time. Just be cool. Like, don't, you're not above anybody just because you're in a position to make more decisions or you're kind of leading a project or you're doing that because you're somebody that people look up to. I'm a manager in my own right, in my own profession with what I do. And I take that position very seriously. Like, treat your people with respect. And, it seems like it should go without saying, but you're seeing so many instances of this, and especially in Hollywood now, where people are coming out and talking about, these toxic work environments where that wasn't a thing people felt comfortable doing, even like 5 or 6 years ago. Like, good on people now for kind of standing up for themselves and, speaking out and are willing to take a stand on that. So good for these people for speaking up. And if it happens to be the case that he's actually doing these things, like the guy's got to go. He shouldn't be in charge of people in projects like that. If you can't just treat people with just the bare minimum of human decency, right?
Oh yeah. It seems like something we're lacking a lot lately in this world is just decency.
Sure.
They only care about themselves and they're just going to treat people however they want to be treated because that's my right and that's what I can do. And it's like, no, treat people like human beings. Right. Treat them like they have families. They're here to work. Like, don't treat them like they're disposable or I'm the big boss. You do whatever I say and you don't have anything else. Like, treat people with compassion and good and kindness and leave the other bullcrap out of it. Like, we don't need that kind of stuff anymore. And I'm glad we're starting to weed more of those people out again. Like, it needs to go through the due process to make sure that, these are all legit and everything else. But, we need those people out of Hollywood. We need them out of everywhere because they're just not needed if that, all of that stuff is actually happening and true. And with 12 people, it's kind of hard to say not to, but we've seen that in many different cases that there have been people who've made stuff up. But, we need to just be better people altogether. Every one of us from every aspect just need to be better.
Right. And I couldn't agree more. Thank you for kind of indulging us as we kind of stand on our soapbox on that a little bit. But that's something I'm very passionate about too, is like, growing up, being raised to treat the CEO the same as you would treat the janitor. And I don't know why we always equate the two, because both roles are equally important to, no one should be valued more than the other. Obviously, one gets paid significantly more money than the other, so there is a little bit of a power dynamic there. But still, like, take that position seriously, and treat the people the way it's the golden rule, right? Treat people the way you would want to be treated, right? So it shouldn't be that hard. But the fact that this is a problem just goes to show that we're not there yet, and we still got a long ways to go. But I kind of want to steer it back towards the official part of it, that he's working on these series that are no longer around. I know Horizon Zero Dawn, like you said, is a very popular Sony series. I love the games. The games were really good. I was excited for the possibility of this show. And it sucks that, somebody was attached to it that, could potentially be doing these things. And now it's up in the air whether it's going to continue. I'm fine putting it on pause to, hopefully, I'm hoping to get somebody in there that'll, treat people with respect, but also make a good quality product too. And I'm excited for the possibility of that show when and where it does come out, right? So maybe if it's done on Netflix, maybe they reach a deal to move it somewhere else and put someone else in charge of it. I'm all for it. It kind of a little bit dampens my excitement for the Umbrella Academy, just to kind of see that this comes out. Because I have really liked the show, like, up until this point. I know they're finally coming out with their final season. And we've talked before about how we feel it's the right time for this show to end. But now with this stuff coming out, I'm kind of glad it is, because you don't want to have that show go on even further in this environment where people are uncomfortable working in. And it just sucks to see. And I hope we hear more. I really, like, it makes me sad to hear stories about this, but I hope we hear more about this, that people aren't like just taking crap from people and are like speaking up and getting these changes made and getting good people in making these movies. And it might suck to lose that creative mind, but there's plenty of creative people out there that won't treat everyone like that and can make it a good work environment that people are happy to come to work and collaborate on these projects that we care so much about.
Yeah, especially in Hollywood, we're outside of it, of course, and everything, dipping our toes in to do this podcast with doing news and information stuff. But there's been horror stories for years of just about how people treat other people in Hollywood. And it's good if, again, everything is true, that they're weeding out those people and that hopefully they're out of Hollywood if that is. But we don't know the extent too of just how bad it was. But if you have 12 different people stepping up to talk, there had to be stuff that was bad enough for them to get talking on it. But just be good human beings, be good people, and just treat people right. Like, it's not that hard. I tell my kids that all the time. Just be good people. We don't make fun of people. We don't bully people. We don't treat people poorly because we're no better than anybody else. So just treat people right.
Yeah, it shouldn't. And those feel like they're basic things to us, but obviously, as we see in the world, that's not the case for everybody, right? So we still got a long ways to go, but hopefully that stuff continues to get weeded out and we can start making workplaces a better environment to be in, because work's already stressful enough no matter what industry you work in, no matter what you do. I think we can all speak for the fact that most of us don't love going to work every day. Like, just try to make that the best environment you can while you're there. That should be the bare minimum anyone asks of someplace that you're spending a significant amount of your time every day. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I kind of want to steer the conversation back towards something a little more positive now. And it's, involving DC, actually, which I know the tongue-in-cheek thing to say is positive and DC aren't, usually in the same conversation. But we did get a little bit of news about the Superman film that's currently being filmed by James Gunn. And it's that Christopher Reeve's son is actually going to have a role in the film. Now, we don't know exactly what role that is yet, but it's awesome. The original, in a lot of our cases, the original movie Superman, his son is going to be in the DC film. And my mind immediately goes to what possible role could they put him in. And I know we talked a little bit before we recorded, but maybe like a Daily Planet reporter or something, and his name's Christopher Reeve, which would be awesome. But something like a nod to his dad that I think would be a really cool moment.
Yeah, I feel like he's got to be a reporter, and maybe we'll see if he does the whole Clark Kent that his dad did, because it's still, to me, like, Christopher Reeve did the best kind of transformation between Clark Kent to Superman, because he... as Superman, he's standing tall, chest out, and looking confident, but, his Clark Kent, he shrunk himself down and was a little more, like, indecisive and kind of just held himself a lot differently, and that was such a simple thing, but such a great thing to try to show this, all right, this is Clark Kent, all right, this is Superman, instead of, like, all right, this is Clark Kent, this is Superman, like... He did such a great thing, so I hope there is some sort of nod that his son is wearing the big old glasses and kind of shrunk in himself, and maybe his name is, Christopher or something else to, as a nod to his dad. But we also got the documentary on Christopher Reeve coming out here soon too, so it's nice to have that and also have his son be a part of this new Superman.
I love that you give that nod to Christopher Reeve, because I agree. That's how I've always felt about his interpretation of both Clark Kent and Superman, because the running gag a lot of times is, how intelligent are these people really if they can't tell the difference between Clark Kent and Superman's a pair of glasses as opposed to a red cape? Like, it's so silly, but it's comics, right? So you take that with a big grain of salt. But yeah, I'm excited to see what he's going to do in the film. It's going to be a ton of fun to watch. I know they're filming a chunk of it here in Cincinnati as well, with our Museum of Natural History being the inspiration for the Justice League building. So excited to see what bits and pieces are actually filmed here and how that's going to be incorporated into the movie, obviously. So a little extra incentive for us to go check that out when it comes out. Not that we weren't already going to do so, but...
Hopefully if James Gunn needs some more extras when they come back to Cincinnati to film.
Yeah, we would love to be there.
We're waiting.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe keep an eye out for us. Maybe it happens. You never know. We'll tell you if it is, obviously. But yeah, that was a cool little story to come out this week, that I'm excited to see what they do for him and kind of the nod that they give to, and for a lot of us, the original Superman. So
yeah, because in Zack Snyder's Snyderverse, we did get the, Christopher Reeve's Jimmy Olsen actor. He played a police officer in there, so we've had a few nods, but, this is a nod to Superman and one of the originals, and still to some like their Superman. Like I love Henry Cavill and stuff, and he was great. Even going back to about people thinking about the skies when Man of Steel was first coming out, he walked around in New York in just a pair of glasses, and no one recognized him. He's like. Because he recorded, he's like, oh, I guess it works.
I remember that so
But I want to see how much time, if it's just like maybe there's a press conference or something and he gets asked Superman a question and, that's kind of the whole thing. I hope they do something fun and interesting because he looks a good bit like his dad.
A lot,
And it'll be fun to have that type of cameo and, see if we have any other cameos that end up coming out of some other Superman properties that end up showing up in the DCU.
I'm looking forward to it for sure.
And if you haven't seen, if you want to avoid anything, there are absolutely I wouldn't say exactly spoilers, but there are set photos everywhere for different characters. We got look at, our Green Lantern and our Hawk Girl and other stuff. So if you want to be surprised, try to avoid anything when it comes to media for the movie because there's quite a lot that's been dumped out. Like they haven't been able to keep the outdoor stuff under wraps very well. And so, if you're one that, kind of like us, I've seen them, but I want to be more surprised and wait and see how it looks on film than looking at all the behind the scenes stuff that's being captured and taken from people from afar.
One of my favorite things that comes from those set photos is the immediate internet losing their minds at what they see. Because I know we had talked about seeing we've both seen the photos of the guy that's playing Superman and what his costume looks like with him wearing it and it looking a little looser and it not looking like the perfect Superman costume necessarily. But at the end of the day, a lot of these set photos that we see don't look like the end product, right? So when they go and do their thing, work their movie magic, it looks completely different. So I know everybody just losing their minds about what a costume looks like, and then by the time the movie comes out, all right, it looks a lot better. I remember the backlash from Captain Marvel was in one in particular because I think she was wearing green and black or green and dark blue or something like whatever the heck it was for the suit that she was wearing, and then comes into the movie, it's like, oh, it's a little thing she can type up that changes the colors to actually look like the comic suit. I'm like, let's calm down and let's see what the movie actually looks like before we freak out about it.
Even some other characters that I mentioned that we've got some set photos of, they're not caring for their look, but there seems to be story and other things behind it. Plus, there'll be some CG touch-ups and everything else. Just let's wait until we see the final product before we start judging the film.
Yeah, let them cook.
Yeah. Kind of keeping with DC, so we had some discussion about the Arrowverse and Arrow. So, of course, Arrow spun off The Flash, and we had so many different shows that spun off, and it was huge for the CW, and we're kind of knowing or getting told now just how important it was. So, the show, one of the showrunners came out saying that Peter Roth at CW basically laid out to them during a lunch or dinner meeting that if Arrow wasn't successful, the CW was done. It was over with. It's shutting down. It's no longer going to exist. So I knew it was important, but just not closing the entire network down important.
Yeah, that network has gone through some iterations over the years. Those of us that are old enough to remember, it was the WB for a long time. So the WB was a big network for teen dramas and some animated stuff. It was popular for a while, and then it kind of hit a dead period before it got rebranded into the CW. And like you said, a show like Arrow was absolutely critical for keeping that network afloat and alive, and that's kind of what it's evolved into today. Now it's still focusing on teen-based dramas, a lot of the programming that they have, and it's weird how they run their network now because it got so expensive, they say, to make these superhero shows, which were wildly successful for them. But even a show recently that was a big hit for them was the Walker Texas Ranger reboot that they just canceled, which was by metrics their highest rated show, and it wasn't even close, and they're canceling it. So I'm kind of wondering what all's going into the decision making out there and how much longer that network may be around, because it seems like it keeps recycling itself, but it finds ways to stay alive. So who knows what they're gonna do next?
Yeah, because of course, as for some of our older fans, that Smallville started on that network as well, and it did 10 seasons on that network and was a huge show for them. And then of course it does seem like they're going through dips and phases. So they, they had the WB and everything they did there, and then they came in and we had 10 seasons of Smallville, and they got away from the superhero stuff for a little bit. Sure. Then they brought back, with the Arrowverse, and now they've gone away from superheroes again. Are we going to see them try to reconnect? Will James Gunn allow some more DC properties to be done, because they were kind of strict on what they could use with Arrow and Smallville and everything else. Like they couldn't reference Batman, or they could, but they couldn't show him. And like they had all these rules of what they were and were not allowed to do with these DC properties on the CW. And I'm sure that hurt them as well, that, well, we got Green Arrow when you get all this, because, it's been revealed now of a look at John Diggle's character as the Green Spartan. It was always rumored that he was potentially going to become a Green Arrow or someone part of the corps there. And we got an official concept looked at it on him, but they never really went through with that story. So it is kind of interesting to see how that network has handled and done things, because the Arrowverse was huge. I get 4 or 5 spinoff shows altogether from. Yeah. And you also had all the crossover events. Like, it was huge for such a long time. And now that they've gone away with that, and what Supernatural was on there as well. And so, they're definitely trying to find, I think, a way forward now that all their big shows are kind of done and over with.
Yeah, and one thing we hadn't really talked about yet, and you and I hadn't even talked about this, but like in prep work and doing this, one thing they have invested in is actually a WWE property. So starting in the fall, if you're not aware of it, their developmental show NXT is moving to the CW in the fall from USA Network. So Tuesday nights, they have what could be like an anchor program for them, and hopefully it does big numbers for them, because it does really well with USA Network. But them getting their developmental brand and moving into wrestling a little bit is kind of a big deal for that, and hopefully that's something that helps drive eyeballs to the network and generates more revenue, and they can create some more of those original stories, because when they do have hit shows, they are really good. Like, they do make really good programming when they connect and hit right. And even I'm still like, I keep coming back to Walker, Texas Ranger. Like, it was doing really well for them. I was kind of surprised that they moved away from it. But yeah, them investing in something like WWE is something that hopefully will kind of help bring them back to some of their original programming and more, shows that they can invest in, that we can get behind. Because it seems like it's definitely taken a little bit of a hit in the last couple of years with them moving away from the Arrowverse. But it's interesting to see what they do moving forward for sure.
Yeah, and it was, like I said, it's really intriguing to see the showrunners and the creators of Arrow kind of come out and saying just how important that ended up being for the networks to survive.
Yeah, it's a big deal. So we'll keep an eye on that moving forward and see what the CW looks like. But I know I talked about WWE a little bit, and I kind of wanted to end our news talking about kind of a big story that broke late in the day yesterday evening, and that's John Cena, who is kind of one of the I don't want to say up and coming, but he's kind of a stalwart in Hollywood now, with like being in so many films. Obviously, Peacemaker on Max.
He is in everything.
He is in a lot of stuff. He did come out at the WWE Premium Live event last night and announced that 2025 is going to be his last year as a professional wrestler. So he's going on this farewell tour. I believe he said it was going to start at the Royal Rumble, which is in February, I believe now. February 1st. It's usually at the end of January, but I think it's February 1st in Indianapolis next year. And he did say that WrestleMania is going to be his last appearance. Now, he did do a press conference after the show and gave a little bit more information. You can go look at that on Peacock if you would like to see more info on that, or maybe read some stories that have come out on it. But that's a big deal, because John Cena, like, for many people watching this, he's been in WWE for over 20 years. Like, he's been there over 2 decades, and one of the biggest stars they've ever had, and easily one of, if not the biggest outside of The Rock, to cross over into Hollywood and be a big deal there. So it seems like he's going to finally commit full-time to that and not waffle on coming back to wrestling at this point.
You got his age combined with just how he's getting roles and everything now that, he's got a potential just to focus on Hollywood and maybe even give his body a break. Because if you don't know wrestling that well and you see John Cena, the guy is just one giant solid muscle. And,
yeah, absolutely.
That it's, of course, as you get older, even Dave Bautista's talked about that. As he's getting older, it's getting harder and harder for him to maintain, his body, like doing Drax and everything else. Mm-hmm. So he's starting to shift his roles away from the big physical roles where he's got to have a shirt off or something else that's really showing, his physique, into, deeper roles or more fun roles. And maybe we'll see that with John Cena, that he's getting because I mean, he's been all over the place. He's done family films, he's done raunchy comedies, he's done superhero stuff. So he's dabbled in just about everything. But yeah, just it I didn't realize it's been like 20 years, but it feels like I've been hearing about him in wrestling for such a long time. So it is a big deal for him to be stepping away. But you could potentially, like The Rock does, Rock kind of came back for a little bit here. You might have him step in for a storyline here or two, but we'll see if his retirement is a full retirement or he takes a break for several years and they ask like a guest spot to jump into the Royal Rumble or do something else, and might have a bit piece here and there. But I mean, it's a long career, and he's definitely, like, I think most people, even if you're not into wrestling, about John Cena and wrestling.
Yeah, the impact that he's even had on pop culture. Like, you see so many people, like, if you watch, sporting events, people hit him with the, you can't see me kind of thing. Like, he's had such an impact on pop culture overall, and it just speaks to the power of WWE, right? Like, and how popular it really is. I know a lot of people kind of scoff at wrestling a little bit, but even WWE right now is seeing record business for a company that was, if you remember anything about the late 90s and early 2000s and how popular it was, it's as popular, if not more popular now than it even was then. And a lot of people didn't think they'd ever get back to that, but business-wise, they're doing as well as they've ever done. They're setting record gates everywhere. They're moving some of these bigger pay-per-views to 2 nights now. WrestleMania is 2 nights now. It didn't used to be. There's talk of SummerSlam being 2 nights in a couple of years. Like, it's doing big business and making a ton of money right now, and it's white hot as far as, like, a product goes and the interest in it. And, it's cool to see that, kind of come full circle again, to see what was, they did have a little bit of a dip for a while, and now they're back on the upswing again in a big way, and it's fun to see. But one of the things that John Cena did talk about in his promo last night, where he announced his retirement, he is going to be, he said, he confirmed it, the first Monday Night Raw on Netflix. When they do move to Netflix, he will be at the show, on the show, in some way, shape, or form. And obviously, it's going to kick off his final year as a, pro wrestler. He hasn't been full-time in a few years now, but he did say, like, if you were interested in checking it out when it moves to Netflix and you're a John Cena fan, John Cena will be there. It's going to be fun to see how that product changes when it moves off of network television to streaming, because there's some talk that they're going to do a little bit more mature, maybe relaxing of the language.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up. I've heard it's going to be like more uncensored, like, because you had the Attitude Era where they were a little more wild with stuff, and they went more family friendly, kind of.
It's been a PG era for a PG product.
It does seem like they, from the rumors we've heard with Raw and everything else, with it being uncensored, that there won't really be commercial cuts and stuff. That they're maybe going back to what that Attitude Era was when it came to just maybe a little more raunchy or more adult. And it'll be interesting to see how they move forward that, and to have him, be a part of it as his kind of final tour here should be pretty big for him too, to have. You're going to have people showing up to do the live taping, but, also, watching him on Netflix.
And they're going all in with the Netflix deal, and throwing a name like John Cena, already confirming, several months out that he's going to be there. The ratings for that are going to be astronomical, I think, for when they finally move over there, because so many people are going to be interested to see, one, what it's going to look like, two, wrestling's on Netflix. People that probably haven't watched it in years are at least going to tune in to see what it looks like. Maybe that fell off because they moved away from some of that more mature programming, language and violence and things like that they used to do, that they don't do as much of now, but the storytelling quality is just as good, if not as good as it has been for those of you that do watch it every week. So it's exciting to see where they moving forward.
Yeah, because when I used to watch it more heavily and to kind of more during that Attitude Era, it was like you had Mankind, Mick Foley being thrown into thumbtacks, you had barbed wire being used, and just blood, and being thrown off the top of cages 20 feet up, and like they definitely did a lot more risky, kind of crazy, violent, bloody stuff. So yeah, we'll see if we actually get a turn back towards that. But I also want to see what the subscribers look like on Netflix when that starts, like seeing what that month before look like numbers, and see how much the wrestling fans, to see how many are already a Netflix subscriber, or see how many are waiting and will subscribe once WWE comes to Netflix. Like, I'm sure there's going to be a pretty solid spike that happens when that starts.
Yeah, their numbers in January are going to be bonkers, because one thing to know about WWE fans, they are very loyal, and they are very, attached to that product. So they will travel wherever it goes, because you have people coming from all over the world to these shows, and now you're starting to see them really branch out into more international like pay-per-views and stuff like they call them premium live events. I'll always call them pay-per-views because that's the model I grew up with, showing my age again. But they call them premium live events. But even this year right now, they're going through this big international expansion with their live events that you would never get. It was rare that they did like one of these events outside the United States. And now this year, I think since WrestleMania was in Philly this year, they haven't done a premium live event in the United States since. Like, they've been in France, they've been in Scotland, they've been in Saudi Arabia. They just did a show in Canada. Not that Canada is like that international, being just right across the border there, but still, like the next U.S. event of this is in Cleveland in a few weeks at SummerSlam. So the international expansion, they're doing a lot of good things that I think are going to make them very successful and sustainably successful moving forward.
Yeah, it's definitely to see how these streaming platforms and stuff are adapting to, as we talked about with the merger potential of Max and Paramount Plus. We're getting wrestling going to Netflix. We're getting live sports and boxing coming to Netflix. Like, we're seeing streaming platforms go a whole lot more into sports. And, we just had the Reds on Apple TV Plus Friday night. And I really enjoy the presentation that they do on there, but it's, does everyone look at Apple TV Plus for sporting events? You've got the MLS, package on there as well. That we're really starting to see these streaming platforms kind of diversify what they're doing and getting the live entertainment, the live sports, and everything mixed in. So there still is a big, dynamic of change. It's just this, kind of start talking about John Cena here, about how he's changed his, like, we've had a few wrestlers who have tried to kind of do the movie and entertainment thing, and not many have succeeded. Like, when you look at it right now, it's Dwayne Johnson and it's John Cena. Those are the two biggest ones that have really, Hulk Hogan back in the day had a lot of films. Like, none of them were that great, but he had quite a lot of movies back in the day, and he was kind of one of the first big ones that really started doing the whole movie thing, and which I still got to laugh with Suburban Commando and everything.
You didn't love him as Thunder Lips and Rocky?
But yeah, he's been in quite a lot of stuff, and you've got wrestlers who have tried to expand, but like John Cena and Dwayne Johnson have been two of the biggest ones, but you can't forget about Hulk Hogan and others. And Batista, who's done, Guardians of the Galaxy and Blade Runner and everything else. But yeah, hasn't been that shy of wrestling entertainers. But for who's really made it big, we've had Roddy Piper had that one infamous line about that he did in the movies and chewing bubble gum and everything. But yeah, like John Cena's getting up to that level of where Dwayne Johnson has gone, and I'm curious to see if we start seeing him maybe in some more dramatic, serious roles past the fun comedy action stuff, because you see a lot as they get older, they want to expand and do some different things, and a lot of times, especially with actors, that's getting into more dramatic roles.
Sure. It would be fun to see him turn into drama, even though he just showed up at the Oscars fully nude. It's hilarious, by the way, if you get a chance to watch it. So funny. His comedic timing is really good. But yeah, excited to see him, just to kind of wrap this up, to see him, it's sad to see him leave wrestling, as he's been such a staple of wrestling for over 20 years at this point. He hasn't been full-time in a few years now, but it's still a big deal when he shows up. But good on him for finally, calling it, a career in that aspect, and moving on full-time into acting, where he's just killing it and getting, like you said, he's in so much that, obviously that's a big time commitment for him, and, it's definitely a lot easier on his body to do those things than it is to run around and beat yourself up in a 20-foot by 20-foot ring, or 300 dates a year. So good on him. I'm excited to see what he does.
So moving into our TV breakdown of the week, we are looking at episode 6 of The Acolyte. So kind of as we're heading towards the end here, we will be talking pretty much full spoilers with things, because if you're watching, you're going to be fully invested. But this was kind of another episode that it was good, but it wasn't, but it was, but it wasn't. Like, it gave us some information, but it's still, it's episode 6 out of 8 episodes, and we're still got a lot of mystery hanging. So like, you would think by now we'd be getting some more things answered. But again, kind of with the last episode, I think Kamir kind of carried this episode with the information, performance, everything he was giving. He was giving us more kind of deeper information on the dark side and how he sees things and the difference between the Sith and the Jedi and, his feelings on everything. And, we kind of got a good back and forth with him and with Osha, which he knew right away. It's Osha. And, we'll find out with Soul how quickly he found out that was May or not. But this whole episode was kind of more informative, but light on the informative. We're following, May and Saul. We're following Kamir and Osha. And then we have a little bit with the Jedi Council as well to kind of wrap up. But it leaves on a cliffhanger. I almost feel like, well, not exactly a cliffhanger, but we don't get the information that they're building up to. Mm-hmm. Like we're building up to something happening or being revealed in this episode, and then end of episode.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And after seeing this episode now, it feels silly to say 6 episodes in. I feel like I have an understanding of things, but we're 6 episodes in. I'm fully convinced that when I go back and rewatch this, because I'll go back and rewatch the entirety in one shot. Mm-hmm. I think I may enjoy this series a little more than I have, just knowing the entire story and putting it together in one narrative. I think this series was probably meant to be digested more. 8 episodes, and then you can watch them all together kind of thing, because like you said, you get so much and so little at the same time in these episodes that it feels disjointed. And I'm almost wondering if they wrote this series hoping for more than one season.
Yeah, because they kind of said that season 1 is going to end definitely, but they do have ideas for season 2. But it does feel like I mentioned with episode 4 and 5, I felt like that should have been one single episode and not 2. And episode 6 kind of made me, of course we haven't seen episode 7 yet, but I have a feeling this felt like the front half of an episode, and episode 7 is going to be the back half of it. So it feels like we got a couple, like 4 episodes back to back here, potentially, with 7, that feels like they should have been 2 episodes instead of 4 episodes, because it did a setup, but we didn't really get a whole lot of payoff with anything that really happened with this episode, because, we followed Osha with Kamir, and he's giving some good information, also some pool time, skinny dipping time with Kamir.
So necessary.
That just thrown in. But it's some fun lines like, if you're not going to join me, I'd like to put my clothes on, which was like, okay, we got a little bit of an adult snarky line in that, but they had a good dynamic back and back as he's saying stuff. The part that I felt wasn't as strong again was the stuff with May. Like, I feel like it almost feels like they don't know exactly what they want to do with May, because as we mentioned in episode 4 and everything, that she was looking to turn herself in. She said all this stuff, whether that was a ploy to try to get Kamir to show who he really is or something, but she's ready to turn herself in. Episode 5, she ends up taking and saying what she says to her sister, taking her clothes, and we start this episode off, she's got one of her daggers and she looks like she's going to sneak up on Soul while he's in the cockpit and end him, and then Soul's like, hey, I need you to take over, and she takes over and flies the ship. Like, okay, she's ready to kill him, but then she goes and flies a ship because he asked her to. Like, just, I don't know, her motivation, her everything just seems like we don't know what is going on with her, not in a good way. Like, it's not exactly a mystery. It's just like her character seems to be so all over the place that we just don't know what to think of her.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they do, it's like, it would almost be better if they weren't twins. Like, they were just 2 completely separate characters, because it feels like they know how to write Osha better than they do know how to write May, which is a little unfortunate. But there is this interesting dynamic that's going on between Osha and Kamir at this point, because Kamir kind of comes out and says, I failed with your sister, but I think he's trying to make up for it by maybe turning Osha to his cause, because he sees a little more promise in her, that maybe she is the more gifted sister of the 2, right? And maybe is much more willing to buy into what he's trying to sell. So you have him like super patient with her throughout this episode, where she's very much aggressive in her wording towards him, at least, maybe not so much in his interactions, where she has multiple opportunities to potentially, kill Kamir, and she doesn't. But it's an interesting dynamic that plays off between the 2 of them, at least, that I think he's trying to pull her into, the darker side of the Force at this point. And she seems to maybe be a little receptive to it a little bit. Like maybe what you're saying actually does make sense. And maybe, I've put so much of my faith in these Jedi that, maybe it wasn't the right thing. Maybe I did leave for a reason, and maybe it didn't align with who I am as a person. And there's a little bit of an interesting dynamic there that I think they could have done a little bit of a better job kind of exploring and, going into a little more detail with. She does kind of ask Kamir, there's a scene where she sees his back and sees the whiplash marks and then kind of asks about who his master was because he got Jedi training supposedly and like trying to figure out who it is. If you see the whiplash marks on his back, maybe you have an idea on who his Jedi master was, and we may find that out by the end of this season. But there's some interesting dynamics between the two of them. It does end. We can go back and talk about some other points in the episode, but one of the things that sticks out that everybody's talking about is the last scene of the episode where he's fixing his helmet and he tells Osha to try on this helmet. Like this is a lot like your sensory deprivation training that you get as a Jedi, right? So there's some of this that like you can put it on and you get the lasting image is her putting the helmet on and seeing things from her perspective, looking out the eyes.
Very tiny slits.
And then you hear the ominous breathing similar to another villain who had to wear a mask and had a breathing apparatus. I'm talking about Darth Vader, obviously, that they're drawing these parallels to, like very similar to that scene from Revenge of the Sith where, Anakin finally puts that mask on and you hear him breathe. It was very much like almost a shot-for-shot remake of that perspective and what it looked like. So I was interesting to see that they put that in there and why they did that.
Yeah, especially like with episode 5, we kind of got hints because we did have Kylo Ren's theme playing with the stranger out there. And of course, his look and style and everything, like, could he be the first member of the Knights of Ren that, Kylo Ren was part of, but it existed kind of before him. Could this, he be the one who kind of started the Knights of Ren? So there are parallels between him and Vader and with Kylo Ren and everything. It's going to be interesting to see which direction they go. But there's also some questions about maybe is Kamir somebody else? Because, we spend most of the time with him, actually all the time with him and his lair on this planet that, in one aspect it looks similar to the island planet or the island on the planet that Luke was found at. It's not exact, but in Star Wars lore, this is where the cortosis is basically mined, where he made his helmet that can, deflect the lightsaber stuff, but it also has a big connection to Darth Plagueis. So could we potentially be seeing something that's more heavily tied with Darth Plagueis here at the end, which we had referenced in the prequels and throughout other Star Wars lore and stuff, but could we potentially either have him as Darth Plagueis, or maybe Darth Plagueis was his master, or are we setting up a potential storyline maybe in other seasons that could explore that, this kind of started and brings us into the Darth Plagueis story, and we get to see that in live action.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see what direction they go, like you said, and it was a really cool ending to what was kind of like you said, kind of an up and down episode again that we seem to be having so many of in this season so far. To kind of jump back over to like the Sol and May portion of the episode, May feels like a very confused written character, and that could just be her character, period. Like she's confused as to what she actually wants. Does she want revenge on these Jedi now? Are we going to see them completely flip on sides of this same coin by the end of the series? We don't know, but they have that interesting back and forth where Sol finally does figure out that May is May and kind of restrains her and subdues her, but he's guilty about something. He's very, moody and, somber and just seems to be really having a crisis in his own mind about how he feels about things that transpired that he really wants to get off his chest. And we finally get to that point where now it seems like he's ready to kind of confess something to May.
And that's the end of the episode.
That's the end of the episode, right? And we're just like, oh, come on, man. Like, get to it.
You're stretched it out just so far. Because it was episode 3 was that flashback to the Coven and everything. And now at episode 6, we're still have no, like, we've just got more hints, but we've got no information on what happened. I kind of thought this episode was going to be the flashback episode that we see that the Jedi were responsible, and like, just, it feels like some stuff is being stretched out just way too far. Like, I think we should have had the answers to what they're hiding kind of before now, just because there hasn't been a whole lot that has happened in between that whole flashback episode to now that's really carried the story on, but we're still kind of stretching out of Soul's confession of everything is all the Jedi. We see are hiding something, even with Vernestra, from the Jedi Council. She potentially Khmer's master, but she's also one that always kind of seems very angry. Could she potentially be a hidden Sith or something else within the council there? Or just there's been tiny bits and pieces of her, but we haven't got a whole lot. Like, we got hints that there's more to her, but like, there's 2 episodes left and we potentially have a lot of information to go over. We still have probably at least 1 flashback to go, which maybe episode 7 is the whole flashback, because there's some scenes we've had in the trailers that we haven't seen yet, and based on who's alive and where everything is right now, those are definitely flashbacks.
Sure.
And so hopefully episode 7 is not a full flashback episode, and then episode 8 tries to wrap everything up in one single episode. Like, you want you can have peaks and valleys, and you want the story to build and come to a satisfying conclusion, but just feels like we started, then we kind of bottomed out, then we went up a little bit, then we bottomed back down. Like, the peaks and valleys have been huge in this episode. It hasn't been a satisfyingly, like, smooth story throughout, because we felt, like I've said, there's multiple episodes now that feels like they should be one episode and not multiple. Like, you could have had something else in 4 and 5 be one episode and 5 be something else, and 6 felt like the front half of an episode and not a full episode on itself. So, like, I've enjoyed the series in a way, but also disappointed in ways that we just, when it comes to understanding and world building and everything else, like, we've been very linear with what we're getting, which isn't a whole lot. Like, we've started to build more about the dark side with Khmer, and all that information, that back and forth was fun and good, because he has that cockiness of the Sith. Like, as you mentioned with Osha, could have taken him out a couple times, but he's got that, I know you won't, because you're sticking to the Jedi ways. But he also had that great line, which don't remember it word for word, but like, why are you still like sticking to the Jedi ways? Like, they didn't want you.
Right.
And all that. And then that kind of made her think about it. Like, and then because she admits she failed and everything else, but she's still thinking in the way of a Jedi. Sure. But this whole series has kind of felt like it's exposing the Jedi for being maybe not the grand heroes that they're very much have tried to police and control the Force. And anybody who doesn't agree with them about the Force is wrong, but also that they manipulate the Force in ways that they're, okay, we did it, it's okay, but if the Sith do it, it's wrong. But we also see the Sith go way out there with, we did get a look back on that Forest planet and get, even though we didn't really need confirmation, we got confirmation that all the Jedi that we saw perish are dead, because they're still laying there. We get a look at that. We got one more look at a few of the main characters, and, got a little bit of story, but again, it kind of ended before anything really built in the episode. Like, most of it was with Khmer, but outside of that, we only got part of the story. Everything with May, even we got some silly slapsticky type of stuff with Basil and May, because he knows right away that, she is not who she thinks she is, and she's like reprogramming the little droid, but she gets sprayed in the eye with oil and other stuff. A little corniness to it, but I have a feeling Soul did know more, but the scene that he kind of confirms that he knows, Basil's right behind, so maybe he wasn't aware, because he did mention the episode, like, how did I not see when they met Khmer back on the one planet, like, how did I not see that he was who he actually is? And so maybe Soul is, because of his emotions and in what he's trying to hide, that he wasn't able to see it, but it just, I don't know. My still biggest problem is May. We just she's just been kind of wishy-washy. We don't know. And if they do end up flipping the twins of May being the good one and Osha being the bad one, it just, I don't know. It may not feel right to me because May has done some really dark stuff. Sure. Yeah. And Osha has been kind of non-committal to most everything. So if she finally commits to something, it's the dark side. And then May's like, well, I've killed multiple Jedi and wanted to kill my sister and set the entire coven on fire. All right, I'll join the Jedi. I hope that's not a revelation that we get.
Yeah, and I hope not too, but it feels like it's going to be one of those shows that starts off on a high, and instead of like coming up and coming back down, it's going to come down and come back up. I'm hoping that's the trajectory that it's on, and they eventually do stick the landing at the end. But I'm hearing, you know, as you're talking about it, I'm kind of thinking about how I want to word this. But you mentioned so much of that. There's multiple episodes that feel like they could be one episode paired. I'm wondering if they had this blocked out for 8 episodes, if it would have been more impactful if it would have been 6 instead of 8. You know what I mean? Take 2 episodes completely out, bring all this story together and kind of compact it a little more, and maybe it has a better impact than it's having. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, there are so many things that feel like they're drawn out between one episode or the other, and if they had less time to work with and compacted it more, the story might be better. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because it feels like they're drawing out some dialogue, they're drawing out some unnecessary fluff to get to this eventual endpoint. And that's kind of why I feel like by the time this series is over, once I go back and watch it linearly 8 episodes in a row, I may feel a little different about it. But like you said, watching it week to week, and that's the interesting dynamic in watching a show like this. We've talked about this a few times where you're not knowing where the story's going yet, mm-hmm. so you're hitting a hard stop here. And you're like, well, now I got to wait till next week to see if we get this payoff that we've been waiting for, and do we get it? Like, how's it going to jump in? So going into episode 7, do we get this confession from Soul? Do we get this flashback that we keep waiting to see? Like, it's interesting to see how they're going to like stick this landing in the last 2 episodes because they're running out of time. But like you said, if they're writing it like it's only 1 season and this is all they're going to do, there's a lot they got to like wrap up in 2 episodes that, judging by the pacing on the show already, I'm not confident we're going to get there.
Yeah. And as we both mentioned, maybe this is a series when it's all said and done. It's much better to binge than to watch episodically. Sure. And there's some shows that work that way, that it's just better to, because it's almost like a movie that's been chopped up into episodes. That's kind of what this feels like. It's more of a movie that's been chopped up into a series. And, you know, maybe watching all 8 in a row is going to make it feel a whole lot better than as it has been. Because, some stuff is like, there's cliffhangers and you can leave people wanting, but it's more of, this feels like the front half of an episode and this feels like a back half instead of a cliffhanger revelation. No, it just feels like you took one episode and you cut it in half again. Like, it just, hopefully it does stick the landing here, but we've only got 2 episodes left. We don't have a whole lot more time, especially with them being 30-minute episodes, 30 to 45 minutes. It's not leaving a whole lot of time to really get to the point, because most of this, series has been about kind of 3 things. So it's the twins and their story, the Jedi and what happened and the mystery of the rise of the Sith, and Kamir's journey for the power of 2, of the Sith journey of there always needs to be 2. There needs to be a master and there needs to be an apprentice. So we have all 3 of those story points, but we're just not getting too deep into any of them. Like right now we're getting more into Kamir, and that's really starting to be interesting and build, but it's getting interesting with 2 episodes remaining. Right. And it's not like we don't like slow burning stuff and that can spread out. Like, one of our favorite series of the year and probably all time for me, Shogun, was a very slow series that took a lot of time to build and had a lot of mystery and stuff behind it, but it did it in such a great way of great dialogue and character building, and you got to see evolutions and changes in the characters every episode. It might be minor, but you saw, relationships build and change, but those were hour-long episodes. And with these 30-minute episodes, it almost just feels like we don't have enough time to really care about any of these characters or really dive into the universe where we're at. Like, we're in the past and we're not really seeing much different than what we've seen of Star Wars. We're just seeing forest and we're seeing, island scenes and a little tiny sections of ships and the Jedi Council, but we're not really getting kind of and it might be expectations. A lot of people going in where the timeline that this was set, expecting that we're going to get a lot of lore, and we're going to get a lot of back building of the Jedi and stuff, but it's been a very small fragment of kind of everything that everyone's kind of expected the series was going to be.
Agreed, and that's on the backs of the writers that had to put this show together, right? So I'm fully confident that I'll feel differently about the show if I watch it all in one sitting. I really do. But that's the fun part about doing these episodic, week by week dives, as opposed to just waiting and watching an entire show and talking about it then. Because I would love, like, looking back at it now, I know we agreed to do this for 8 episodes, and I'm in it till the end like you are, but it'd be fun. I want to have a different conversation probably offline with you about it when we both go back and watch through it again to see how we feel about it differently when it's in its entirety and we're not guessing week to week on, we're getting a breadcrumb here when we want like a whole piece of bread. You know what I mean? Like, give me a little bit of a stronger push when you're dealing with a finite amount of time, because these episodes are only at runtime, not including credits, like 25, 30 minutes max. Like, they're not long episodes. So I think when you're writing for such a short amount of time, it's different for these, shows like, go back to, I know we like to lean on Game of Thrones a lot, but Game of Thrones is an hour, and it's a solid hour. So you get much more time to kind of give that lore and build it. So I think that's where you kind of have to hit it a little harder and hit it, to the point a little quicker than what they're doing for these, 25, 30-minute episodes, that I think they're kind of missing the mark a little bit on giving us a little bit more oomph and a little bit impact, because we could point to other series that they've done on this platform, like The Mandalorian, which episodes are 30 to 40 minutes usually a piece, and they gave us so much more and so much, more impactful writing that I'm feeling is a little bit lost with the show.
Yeah, I agree. I think with this show that if each episode was an hour and we had more world building and more lore building, and we played with that mystery more, because it's trying to set up a mystery and things unraveling, but in 30-minute episodes, it just feels like you don't have enough time to properly unravel that story as it needs. Like, we're not trying to hate on the show, but we're being honest. We're not going to kind of sugarcoat exactly how we're feeling. I was really looking forward to the series when we heard about it and everything, started seeing the trailers and everything else. And I don't think it's a terrible series, but I do feel like almost like they handcuffed themselves with the 30-minute episodes. I feel like if these were 1 hour, even if it was 8 one-hour episodes or 6 one-hour episodes, it would probably feel a lot better. It would allow more time to breathe, allow them to play with the mystery and the drama and the dialogue and the action more, because we're just getting such small bits and pieces every episode that, like, let us know if you want us to go back after all 8 episodes are out and we've had a chance to, like, binge watch them all together. If you want to see what we feel after we've watched it as almost like a movie, as we watch it as a whole. So let us know in the comments of the video, or head over to our Discord or social media. Let us know if you want us to kind of revisit this series and give an overall talk about how we felt after seeing all 8 episodes at once. Because I said, it may be something that's better if you watch it all at one time, or at least in those blocks, like watch episode 1 and 2 together, watch 3 and 4 together, watch, I guess 4 and 5 together, 3 on its own, and then like 6 and 7, and then 8 on its own. So it does feel like we have a few episodes that should have been hours, and then some that, okay, the flashback that only really needs to be 30 minutes. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they stick the landing with 2 more episodes left. There's still a lot to kind of go with, and we just haven't got the development with these characters that we kind of felt or hope. And like most of the Jedi, we've got mostly talking. We've had a couple action scenes. We just haven't seen the Jedi being Jedi. Yeah. And the mystery that we're building to, I feel like it's probably, if it hasn't already, starting to lose people's interest in the overall mystery story, because they've just waited so long to kind of get to the point of it. Agreed. Because you could have gotten to the point of it and then explored what that means, but it feels like now we're going to have 1 episode to explore what that means, instead of maybe a couple that you can really dive into. Well, how wrong were the Jedi and what they did, and how right are the Sith and what that dynamic is. Well, we've only got 2 episodes to cover a lot.
It's going to be a lot, and we'll see how they wrap it up for sure.
Yeah. So that is The Acolyte. So the first 6 episodes are on Disney Plus to watch. So episode 7 will be coming out. It's Tuesday evening. 2 more left. We're getting towards the end where it's going to be stopping right before Deadpool and Wolverine here. hopefully they can stick the landing with these last two. And yeah, I'm looking forward to revisiting at the end, but it really needs to get kind of to the point. It doesn't really have time left. But check out The Acolyte on Disney Plus, and hopefully you stick with us to these last two, and we see if it was worth sticking through this series.
Absolutely. And now we want to move on into our movie review of the week. So this week is Illumination's sequel in the Despicable Me series, Despicable Me 4. So this kind of takes place, shortly after the events of Despicable Me 3, I want to say. And we're going to get into spoiler territory a little bit to kind of talk about how we feel about this film. And you and I haven't talked about how we feel about this film yet moving into this. So it's going to be an interesting
conversation. I took my kids, you went on your own.
Yeah, we watched it separately to see if we had similar or different viewing experiences and how we felt about this film. But this story follows Gru and his family going to Gru's school reunion. So...
Well, they end up, showing up for, there's a Villain of the Year awards or something that they're having at the old villain school, and we end up finding that Gru has this kind of school-age, not bully, but they were opposites, arch rivals to each other, which this is played by Will Ferrell doing a French accent and everything in it, but... Yeah, that kind of kicks off the whole story is because Maximine, I think his name was. Maxime, because I kept thinking of Maxine, and I think it's Maxime or something like that, very close to a very different movie that came out at the same time.
Right.
But yeah, I was very mixed and torn on this film. It's a family film, it's meant for kids, but as we saw with Inside Out too, parents can connect greatly with these films and stuff, and to me, it feels like with Despicable Me 4 that they need to give the Minions and Despicable Me a bit of a break.
I agree. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not the biggest fan of the Despicable Me movies, but I was willing to give this one a shot as well. And it very much feels catered towards kids. The humor is a little more kid friendly in this, as opposed to, like you said, one thing Disney and Pixar do a much better job of is incorporating the entire family and humor into it. There's a little bit of stuff that could, make the parents chuckle a little bit in the film, but I'm going to be completely honest. I went and saw this film. It was just okay to me. I mean, the storyline felt, the whole plot line and everything felt a little disjointed to me in this film. Okay, they're old arch rivals, but why are they beefing now kind of thing? And, it's this whole, who's a better villain? Gru's technically a good guy trying to catch villains now. So that's kind of the turn that he's gone, but he's going back to try to catch, Maxime Lamal, who's his arch rival at this school event. And he kind of waffles back and forth on, is he a good guy, but can he still do his villain thing, throughout the whole thing? It's still kind of I don't know, the plot line just didn't really hold my interest very much in this film. It was very loose with everything. Like you said, the Minions, in my opinion, complete overkill in this movie. And I hate saying that because they are adorable and they are very popular. And I get why kids absolutely love them, but it felt like a little bit of overkill with the Minions in this one, who've kind of already gone off and gotten their own movies and doing their own things. And this is actually the first Despicable Me movie in 7 years. So it had been a while since the last one. The last one came out in 2017.
Yes, we got, I think, 2 Minion movies in between them. So this is the 6th overall kind of property in this world.
Yeah, and there's some fun elements in this film as well. I'm not going to completely just trash the film or anything, because the whole Max, they get him arrested and he goes to jail, but he breaks out almost immediately. And now Gru's family is in danger. So the plot line of the film is them assuming these new identities and moving to this new town, kind of like a witness protection kind of thing, which makes absolutely no sense, because I think Gru can more than handle himself with his arch rival. He arrested him once before. Why couldn't he arrest him again? Why does he really need to go into hiding? But either way, it's about them hiding from him, and there's some fun that's to be had there with the family and stuff, assuming new identities, and the stubborn youngest child that doesn't want to lie because they taught her that lying is bad, but is it okay to lie to assume your new identity kind of thing. There was some fun dynamics with that and stuff, but overall with this film, man, I was just kind of meh on the whole thing. It has its cute and fun moments and funny stuff, but it just felt so a little too over the top childish for me. And that's just, it could be because I don't have kids of my own, and like, don't get me wrong, I can appreciate like things with a childlike whimsical nature that, you know, I don't necessarily have to have kids to enjoy, but I don't know. This film just didn't hit where it needed to for me.
It felt like a kitchen sink film that they were just kind of throwing absolutely everything they could at it, with none of it getting a huge like payoff or anything. Because yeah, we got them going into witness protection because of Maxime. And one thing that, you know, big spoiler with it, that Maxime is obsessed with cockroaches, so he turns himself into well, like 10% man, 90% cockroach, which didn't really in the end pay that much attention to the story, because we end up seeing that he's got the body of a cockroach and that he has a gun that he can turn, you know, other people into cockroaches, and he has his army of cockroaches that help break him out. But towards the end of the movie, like when they defeat him and everything else, like his cockroach minions are nowhere to be found, nowhere to be seen. So it's like, well, we're doing all this with the cockroaches, but we're just going to kind of drop it at the end. And that's how most of the stuff felt, because like we do have, like with the oldest daughter, she's feeling, oh, I've left all my friends behind and I got a new school and I've got to do all this and I don't have any friends. Well, they didn't touch on it again. Yeah. Like they brought it up that she's feeling bad about this, but then they never touched on it again. Correct. And it was just done and over with. And the other two kids were just kind of there. They didn't really have a whole lot to do other than, you know, the youngest not wanting to call herself Brittany because that's not her name. And the other one, oh, she'll lie and do about anything, you know, other than she beats up a karate instructor and stuff past that. But like they didn't have a whole lot to do. And the minions had very little to do, but also too much to do, because we kind of got them split. Like, well, the organization kept most of the minions while Gru only kept 3, but then they just immediately lock one of them up in the vending machine, and it stays there the entire, like spoilers, it stays there the entire movie. So we mainly got 2 main minions with Gru doing stuff. And then on the other side, a story point that really had made no sense the entire film is that they made super serum minions who are basically Fantastic Four plus Superman and other like superheroes. They turned the minions into superheroes, but that really had no bearing, no cause. Like they show up and help towards the end, but really it could have been resolved without them. Like the whole superhero storyline just did not make any sense, no bearing. Like that's what I called a kitchen sink. They threw in so many different ideas, but none of them really meshed together well, merged together well, didn't really fit. And yeah, it was kind of a mess. That's what I said. It felt like they need to give it a little break, because you didn't really care about what was going on. Like the third one was just kind of okay too. It kind of had some missteps as well, but this one was just like, let's just make another Despicable Me movie because it makes a lot of money. Let's just make a movie.
And let's not overlook that, and let's not understate that either, because if you check the box office numbers, I saw some of the early reporting on how this is doing over this 4th of July weekend. It's on pace for 5 days to make like $150 million opening. So obviously they're doing fine, right, as far as financially. But we want to talk more just about the quality of the storytelling, which I did think takes a bit of a hit here. And it felt a little bit like I hate saying this because it feels like I'm completely trashing on this film, but it felt like a little bit of a bargain bin Inside Out meets the Marvel Cinematic Universe away in a little bit, almost like an Incredibles type thing is what they try to almost make it like.
It kind of felt like what we used to have in the 90s, because we had Lion King 2 and Little Mermaid 2, those straight to video, just slap something together and put it out. That is kind of what it felt like. It pulled from some, like I laughed, there was a Spider-Man reference and everything in there, but it was trying to like mimic and pull from Marvel and Pixar and Disney and other films and stuff, but nothing really worked that well together.
Yeah, I mean, there are some fun, cute, funny moments that are in the film. I'm not saying that that's, you know, not in that for me, but just talking specifically about the story, like there's just so much jumbled in it didn't make sense. That, okay, this guy could turn himself into a cockroach with superpowers, so the agency decided we need to counter that by making a couple superpowered, you know, minions for whatever reason. But it's part of that slapstick kind of like, you know, comedy geared towards kids, because kids love Minions. What if we give Minions superpowers? That'll be cute. That'll be fun. Everybody loves superheroes. It didn't exactly work, because obviously the Minions are notoriously incompetent and, you they're cute and funny and babble, and there are some funny moments with the minions, and some of the ways they write them are smart and funny too, but it just missed a lot of the marks for me on this one. I don't know why. Like, I didn't go into this movie with any type of negative mindset. I try to go in with a completely clear mind slate when I see these films and just view them subjectively, giving them the benefit of the doubt going in, at least that, I'm going to enjoy it. And I got to admit, I'm kind of glad it was only like a 90-minute film. Yeah. It's a short movie, and I'm glad that it was short. Like, it definitely didn't need to drag on beyond that, in my opinion, but I don't know, man. I feel like if they're going to keep making these because they make money, this might be the last one that I watch of this, because it just it didn't really hit where it needed to hit for me.
Yeah, and they also had another storyline with, with this new house that they're in. They have new neighbors. So, Gru is trying to befriend the dad who owns a big car dealership and is a real stuck-up guy. And the mom is kind of stuck up, but she's trying to include him. And they have a tennis match and stuff. But, like, everything was just kind of bits and pieces. Like, you had that stuff, but we're instantly going to leave. But because most of it with that family was the daughter. So we learned that the daughter kind of knows who Gru is and wants him to run a mission with her. And so that's kind of the other outside of, they're hiding from Maxime, but now, well, this little teenage girl wants me to, he's going to out me. So I'm just going to do whatever she says to go back to the school and kidnap the honey badger that's the mascot of the villain school, because she wants to be a villain, which kind of sets up that maybe they're setting her up for the next movie and doing that stuff. And some of that stuff was fun, but it's just like, we've got a little teenage girl that's going to telling Gru what to do and everything to do. And she has a little bit of development because she starts seeing the kids as friends and, ends up helping out and stuff. But it was just so many different story points to try to get to this end. And like when we got to the end with Maxime and everything, like he's got his flying cockroach ship and he ends up finding out where Gru is, and they have somewhat anticlimactic kind of ending to it, because we find out everything that's happening in the movie, why they're at each other, and again, some more spoilers, is because Maxime was going to do a song and dance routine at the talent show, and Gru did the exact same one before he was able to perform. That was the motivation for him to turn himself into a cockroach and be a villain and take over the world, or just take over Gru's world.
Right. It was so flimsy and so silly that I was just like, oh, okay. That's about as paper thin of a motivation as you could find. And that's what leads into a little bit of the childish portion of it, right? So it is geared toward kids. I was in a movie theater with a bunch of families with their kids. They all seemed like they had a great time watching the movie. It just wasn't necessarily for me.
See, I was going to ask you how the theater seemed for you, because we weren't a very full theater, but there was plenty of kids in there, and it was silent.
Really?
There was very little laughter. There was very little anything. Like, there wasn't much coming out of any of the kids. My kids said they enjoyed it. In the end, they liked it, but it wasn't very funny to them. They didn't have, but I've got an almost preteen here, and I've got one that's just turned 9 and stuff, but they're still kind of in, at least the 9 are still in that age range. And even though they said they enjoyed it, I could see there's some hesitation. Like, it was it was okay. Like, it wasn't like, I know they really enjoyed the first 2, and we had a lot of fun with those, and they liked the third one, but this one, even from a kid perspective, I did not see that much enjoyment in the movie theater from kids either. So it's from my reaction of seeing that from my kids and other kids around the theater, is like, who exactly was, because there was a good mix of age ranges in our showing. Like, who exactly was this film made for? Because we had up to 12 years old through what looked like 5 or 6 from other parents, and none of them really seemed that they were there, and they stayed through the whole thing, but you didn't have the laughter and sound of enjoyment that you normally get with a kids movie.
Yeah, so that could speak to some of the exhaustion that you're talking about. And I say the kids seem like they were enjoying it. I don't mean like it was a rip roaring, like everybody's falling out of their seat laughing at the humor. Not necessarily that, but there were some laughing moments where the kids definitely enjoyed it. But yeah, I'm interested to see if they try to go back to this well again, which, depending on the success of the film, I'm sure they absolutely will, what that's going to look like for them moving forward, because I don't really know where they're gonna take this at this point, because I feel like they've gone to the well more than enough for this. But as we see with a lot of these, they're willing to go back if it keeps making money. So be curious to see, if you see the film with your kids, I would love to know what you guys think as well, because like I said, I try not to be too overly critical of too much, but on this one, I don't know, man. It wasn't it for me.
Yeah, as we know, it's not really made for us. It's made for kids, but going from being a parent and having kids there and seeing their reaction, like it really did feel like who exactly was this made for. It kind of felt like, I said, what we had a lot in the 90s of those straight to VHS, straight to DVD, cheap at-home versions of like The Little Mermaid 2 or Lion King 2 or Aladdin 2 and 3 and everything, that weren't up to par to what the originals were. It kind of felt in that method that they did kind of just throw everything they could think of in a movie and tried to make it work as a film, and overall it didn't really work. There wasn't, like, I could remember mainly one scene that had basically the whole theater laughing. Past that, there's maybe a couple like type of reactions, but between kids and parents, there just wasn't a great reaction. And I left it saying like, okay, that was, as I started this review off with, that I just feel like it's probably time that they give it a break. And I was surprised that it's been 7 years, because it feels like we have seen them nonstop. And it's probably because we got the other Minion movies and everything else in there, but it feels like all of it needs to take a little bit of break to maybe, like we saw with Shrek. We had 4 Shrek films. It's taken a very long break, and now we're coming back with 2 more that we got a bit of a break from them, because the 4th one was okay with that one, and they took a break, and hopefully they come back strong. And maybe that's what Despicable Me needs now, is to take a little bit of break from the Minions, from Gru, from everything. Give that a little time to rest, and if they do revisit it, it's less of a kitchen sink type of story and one that's a little bit more flushed out, because we didn't really get any sort of advancement with this family. Because, well, I guess I forgot when I was listing out what the film was really about. Well, probably the biggest underlying story outside of it all was Gru's relationship with his son.
Sure.
Because his son kind of hates him, loves the mom, hates the dad, and we see that evolve throughout the film. But like, it was very thin interactions here and there till it came to the conclusion. We even got stuff odd that happened with the baby, with Maxime and everything. Like, just everything felt like they had all these different stories, but they didn't have something that really worked too well. So they just did whatever they could to try to make all these bits and pieces work as a film, and it just didn't really work.
Yeah, and I'll spoil a little bit of that too, talking about it before we end things on this review. It, like you said, it's a very thin plot line of this bonding between father and son, where Gru is trying so hard this entire movie to get his son to just say dada or smile or be happy around him, without causing him physical pain, right? The only thing that makes the baby laugh is when his dad, gets beat up or, what have you, or has some kind of silly thing happen to them. But there's nothing that really bonds them throughout the movie. And then by the time the end comes around, spoiler alert, he tries to hurt Gru by taking his son. And the end fight is Gru trying to get his son back. But like the very end of it, it's like, Gru's about to get, kicked off of this high perch that he's on. And, he's turned the baby Gru Jr. into like a cockroach himself. And like, he's, just kind of standing there with Maxime, and like Gru looks at him and goes, "It's okay, son, I love you," or whatever. And then like all of a sudden that's just enough to snap him out of it and like help save his dad, and like they bond after that. And I'm like, that seems so like, I want to say it's just lazy writing. Mm-hmm. It's just lazy. Like, just telling your son you love him. He's been trying to show him he loved him this entire movie, but it took him almost dying and just saying it's okay and being okay with it for him to just kind of snap out of it and be on his side again. It just felt like, I don't know. It was just so lazy. I get what they were trying to do, but it just didn't work for me at all.
I also feel like Will Ferrell was a waste in this movie.
It really was.
I mean, his Maxime was kind of a straight villain. Like, he was kind of very serious in his stuff, and you know, Will can be very slapsticky and over the top of stuff, and he's doing a French accent and kind of disappearing behind a bad French accent, but like there just wasn't a whole lot for him to sink his teeth into to like do really good with. Like, I can't remember in much or anything that I laughed of from. And you got, to me, a very funny guy in Will Ferrell, just in a character that gives him nothing. Yeah, and I felt kind of this was the first Despicable Me movie too that didn't give Steve Carell a lot either. Like, he is good as Gru and can be really funny, but it felt like his Gru was also kind of not given a whole lot of great material to work with to be funny or entertaining. Like, it's kind of the same slapstick and same stuff that they've done 100 times now with the character, and same kind of stuff they did with the villain in Despicable Me 3 is the same stuff they were kind of doing with the villain here. Like, they were just kind of retreading and repeating and redoing. Well, it worked in other movies. Let's just redo it again, but it's starting to just wear a little thin. But yeah, like Will Ferrell was kind of, you could have probably had anybody else doing a bad French accent for that character, and it would have been just about the same as having Will Ferrell, which is kind of it's a disappointment to have Will Ferrell just be in a kind of type of role which he could have been really funny in.
Yeah, and that's where I feel like it's a lot of missed opportunities, because it's not short on big name voice actors in this. Like Maxime's, girlfriend is played by Sofia Vergara. She does the voice character for that, and she's kind of funny in this, like, super snooty, like, villain that just, for whatever reason, loves Maxime Le Mans, maybe for his popularity.
She reminded me of it. I can't remember the name now, from Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Correct, Natasha.
Natasha.
Yeah.
She reminded me of Natasha.
Very much a Natasha type. And there's some of that too. They throw a bunch of big names into the film thinking it'll draw a lot of money. It's going to make a lot of money. It's going to do well. Like I said, it's on pace for opening weekend to make $150 million or whatever the final numbers wind up being. You'll know by the time this episode drops, but financially it's going to do well, and they'll probably, keep churning these out. But if the quality of the writing keeps the way that it is for this one, I kind of see people's enjoyment in the film just continuing to decline. And I'm wondering if it's one of these types of animated films that kind of ages itself out. Like, there was a generation of people that this really connected with. And like you said, to your point, your daughters are a perfect example of that, where they were really young when these movies first came out, and the humor hit with them, and they enjoyed it and they liked it. But as they're starting to get older, they're aging out of it a little bit, and you're wondering if there's a disconnect now with the people that loved it that are kind of aging out of it versus a new generation of people that it may not necessarily connect with.
Yeah, and just how my daughters felt to it, it does feel like it's probably not something they're going to ask to watch a bunch, because we will. Like, we've watched If 5 or 6 times now at home after getting it on demand, and we've rewatched Inside Out a couple times after seeing Inside Out 2, and they'll want to rewatch stuff that they really like and enjoy, even like rewatching Wonka and other things like that. I have a feeling this is not going to be one that they really request or want to watch as they did with all the others.
Sure. And that could speak to the staying power of it moving forward, right? Like I said, could it be something that maybe they take a break from, like you said, kind of let the generation age up a little bit and maybe come back to it and target it to a new generation of kids, and maybe it connects again. We'll see. It's funny how those things kind of work themselves out. Like, and that's what we talk about, sticking around too long. Does it stick around too long to where the quality of story doesn't keep up with the people that are interested in these characters? So it's a fun thing to kind of keep track of for us, just to see, how these stories connect with people and what they do with it moving forward.
Yeah, you see how long it was between Inside Out and Inside Out 2, but they advanced the story to where the age of the people would be. And yeah, Despicable Me is kind of still doing the same writing that it started with, and it probably is time, if they do another one, that it kind of evolves and changes a bit. Sure. Okay, it's just didn't work.
Right. I agree. And that's where we'll leave it at that. And Despicable Me 4, go see it in the theaters if you want to check it out. Don't let our opinion of the film sway you into maybe not giving it an opportunity. Go see these in the theaters and form your own opinions, and come back to us and tell us if we're wrong, if we're missing the mark on it, or if you felt completely different watching it. Maybe you agreed with us. Let's talk about it. Let's have some fun with it. So go check it out now. It's in theaters, and we think there's a possibility you could enjoy it, but you may feel the same way we do.
Yep. Moving on to what's coming up this week. So we have Fly Me to the Moon, which is a Channing Tatum, Scarlett Johansson film where they're, we have the moon landing is about to happen, but they, kind of a dark comedy that they are filming a version of it in case something goes wrong. And it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. And then you have Long Legs, which I've heard a lot about, which it's going to be interesting to check out. It feels like a very creepy, disturbing horror film with Nicolas Cage in it and everything. I've heard a lot of buzz behind it. It's going to be interesting to see how that does, especially with all these family films and stuff that we have going in theaters right now and right before Deadpool and Wolverine. How is a horror film going to do kind of in, right now, what's making money is a family film. How is a horror film going to fit in? But I've heard great things about them. Interesting to check that one out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one to watch. And we'll keep, obviously you'll see by the end of the episode what we're going to be reviewing next week, but it's an interesting week for movies for sure.
And coming out on demand, we have a couple big films. So The Bike Riders has only been out in theaters like 3 weeks. It's going to be out on July 9th on demand to purchase. We enjoyed the film overall. It wasn't exactly what we were expecting going in, but we were able to adapt to it and really kind of enjoyed the performance of especially Jodie Comer was fantastic in that movie. So make sure you check that out. But again, it's kind of what we've talked about a lot with the climate of movie theaters and everything else. It's 3 weeks, even though it's a smaller independent movie, is 3 weeks enough time to really give it? Because we know, like I said, Deadpool and Wolverine's coming up, but should it have more time to have in theaters than just 3 weeks?
Agreed.
But another film we enjoyed a lot too, Kingdom of the Planets of the Apes. So you can go back in our archive, see a review for both of those films. We are getting that on July 9th, and we did get confirmation that the version that they talked about where they're not going to do the CG apes, you're going to see the actors in their mocap suits for the entire film. That version will be available at launch of On Demand here in July 9th as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that mocap because, you've got these actors that are wearing these suits that can't be that comfortable, or you're going to feel a little self-conscious in because you've got dots all over you and you have skin tight suits on of how they really were able to give those great performances. And we see their true performances without the CG of the apes being going in. So I'm really looking forward to check out, not only to see the film again at home, but also to check out that mocap version.
That's gonna be a ton of fun to watch, to see the great work done by those people to bring those characters to life in that way. Just to my brain is gonna have a hard time not turning the apes, trying to fill in with the apes, but it's gonna be fun to see them all suited up running through and how to on point they have these apes and the way they move, and just to see how that's all captured. I'm fascinated by all of it.
Yeah, and to see just how different of what they did in the suits compared to what they look like as apes. Is it going to be like 1-to-1 and they really matched up really well, or did they have to do some, changes and modifications in CGI to make it work better? But I have a feeling it's going to be pretty close to 1-to-1 just from already some behind the scenes stuff that we've seen of them in the mocaps and recording. But yeah, for those who like the real technical aspect of stuff that's fascinated by that, it's going to be really interesting to check out that version. TV-wise, so I've never really got into this much, but people absolutely love it. It's been going on for so long, but on Discovery, it's Shark Week. So we've got plenty of programming for the shark lovers and everything like that. I've tuned into an episode here or there, but some people, it's like appointment viewing. They will sit down and watch everything that comes out during Shark Week.
Yeah, it's a fun thing to watch people kind of nerd out over. We all have our things that we nerd out about and everybody does, right? So the Shark Week thing has really taken off the last several years now, where it's it's a big deal. Like you said, I know at least one or two people that are taking the entire week off of work to watch all of this programming, which is wild for me, but good for them. If they get enjoyment out of it, I'll probably tune in to see, one or two things, what they got going on, just to kind of, check in and see what the buzz is about.
Yeah, because they normally get celebrities will do certain type of shows and bring all that in to try to bring some extra, viewership by having celebrities do stuff.
I love it.
Yeah, so kind of rounding out the TV side, so this is an animated series that is not for kids. The Sausage Party movie has got an animated series on Prime Video. So Sausage Party Foodtopia will be out on July 11th, but again, And no, it's not meant for families. It's not meant for kids. Very adult series. I was mixed on the movie. It was okay to me. Like, it is also where it hits because it's very crass humor, and I can enjoy crass humor. But It was something that I was okay with. So, but it is kind of surprising to see that it has some legs, because a lot of times when you get movies that are that out there and crass and everything else, that it's a one-time deal. But it's getting a full series order, so it did well enough for them to want to revisit it.
Yeah, and Prime is notorious for taking on these more adult, kind of over-the-top type series, right? Because you see it with even like another animated series like Invincible that's very graphic, very violent. Obviously, with The Boys that we're both watching that you and I both love is very over-the-top, very graphic. Like
even for adults,
it's extremely graphic. But Prime's not afraid to go there, and that's kind of what I appreciate about them is they kind of have a little bit of everything. But yeah, the fact that I was a little surprised that this was a thing too. Like Sausage Party as a film alone was funny. Like it has its really funny moments and some really smart writing, but there's a lot of really, like you're putting this in a movie, like kind of
it's kind of cringe. You knew they were going to go there, and they went there, and it just
went
fell
all
flat.
in on it. Like they committed. They have no problem committing to it. So good on them, but good for them for getting a series. If you're into that sort of thing, definitely check it out. And like he said, keep the kids like watch that one when the kids go to bed, because that's definitely some raunchy stuff or ranchy stuff, as I should say.
Yeah,
but that'll do it for this week's episode of We'll Bring the Popcorn. We wanted to take a minute again to remind everybody that we do have some new shirts available in our merch store to kind of commemorate Marvel Month here. To check those out, we got some positive feedback on those as well, so check those out. If you get a chance, we'd love for you to buy one if you would be so kind and enjoy it.
And we should be showing them off on the next episode, waiting for our copies of it to come in here, and we should be able to show it to you next episode.
Absolutely. Looking forward to that. And we can't thank you enough. Coming up next week, we will be reviewing episode 7 of The Acolyte. We've had some very strong opinions about this show, but we're coming up on the end. The last 2 episodes are right around the corner here, so we'll be reviewing episode 7, as well as Fly Me to the Moon, which I'm very excited to check out as well. Channing Tatum, Scarlett Johansson. Sign me up. Love both of them. Curious to see what this film looks like, and we'll review it next week. And that'll do it for this week's episode. Until next time, I'm Josh, he is Brad, and we'll see you next week.